All right. So, guys, here we are. I'm just gonna bring up my bring a Blender. And incidentally, this is what I was kind of showing something to my first years, kind of getting an early intro into Blender, working with grease pencil, planning stuff out, more for like a motion comic type thing, slash cinematic. But yeah, all stuff we can do in Blender as well. But let us Okay, let's just start with a brand new scene here. Delete this. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to set this up for animation. So we want our timeline here, which is fine. That's going to give us the ability to kind of play our animation sequence. It's going to kind of show us where our keyframes are. We can actually select those keyframes and move them around. We can also set the start and end range on our animation. Okay, so we want to do that. And we can also set things like a keying set. Okay, so once we have our element inside the scene, we can set to whenever I press the I key, it will set a key on these different things. I can predetermine that. Otherwise, it's when I press I, it's going to bring up a menu. Whenever I press I, it'll bring up my keying menu. I do not have anything selected, but if I did, let me just quickly import or open. Actually, let's open. All right. So here's like actually a setup where I kind of, you can see I have my video reference there on the top right. And I was able to use that to kind of plan on my animation. So this is kind of what we want to have things set up as, or something similar to this. Where we have our character, we have our character, right? We have our camera, and then we have our reference video, or what have you, and we can kind of just make sure that it makes the process way simpler. Let's put it that way. Once you have like a good animation reference video to work from, your timing will be solid, your posing will be solid, everything kind of just will work properly. Okay, so yeah, we definitely want to make sure that we're able to leverage this. So we're gonna kind of, again, just take a look at this process. Let's open. Okay, so here's our rain character. Okay, and again, as I mentioned, you can use this for your submission. So you can absolutely work with this character, this rig, for your animation assignment if you choose to do so. All right, so what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to kind of prep this scene up so that I can have my reference video, I can have my correct editors and everything set up. So just a quick recap, and I know we've talked about it before, but I think it sometimes needs repeating. If you need to kind of tweak and adjust your layout, you can always just click and drag on these dividers and kind of resize the distribution of these, the area distribution of these windows. And then if we want to create a new window, we could drag from one of the corners. You'll see a little plus, your cursor turns into a little plus, and then you can basically click and drag inwards into the window to divide it into a new window. If I want to collapse, I can click within the corner of one window, so I'm inside this corner. Make sure that I'm in this corner, right? I'm looking at the top border and the left border here, and my cursor is to the right and below those two borders. And then I can click and drag across a border of the same length to collapse. Okay. Control Z does not work for this, so if you try to Control Z out of this, it just won't do anything. If I click and drag and I'm going to try to go up, you'll see it doesn't work because these two borders are of different sizes. So I need to click and drag across here, right? And then if I want to collapse this, I click and drag up like so. All right. And then any of these windows we can turn into any other kind of window. So I can turn this is currently a text editor. I can turn this into a 3D viewport, right? I can turn this into a UV editor window. I can turn it into a whole bunch of different things, but for our purposes, we just want this to be our 3D viewport. Make sure my screencast keys are back on. Turn it off, turn it on. There we go. I'm going to drag up here, and we're going to get some of our animation editors. So the main ones we want, we could probably get away with a timeline. Dope Sheet's really powerful. Mainly a dope sheet. Let's make sure we start with a dope sheet for sure. A dope sheet will give us a lot of ability. So we have our dope sheet. We can change this from dope sheet mode into action editor, grease pencil, etc., etc. Action editor is what I would generally set it on if I'm doing characters, and the reason for that is we can have multiple animation states of our character, all kind of packed together. So basically, we can. Okay, I'm just double checking. See if my stream drops out, guys, for whatever reason, just let me know. Just send me, unmute your mic in Google Meet, and just let me know that the stream has dropped out, or if there's issues with it. I don't know, I'll make sure I don't keep going. All right. So, anyways, we can have multiple animations. So I can go here to new. Right when we're in our action. So first dope sheet, and then change our dope sheet to action editor mode. Incidentally, if you're working with grease pencil, you'll set this to grease pencil mode, in which case you'll see all your grease pencil layers, okay, within the grease pencil object that you're working with. We don't have that right now, but we'll go to action editor. Okay, so we'll set our dope sheet to action editor style, and then we can have multiple actions. So I can have, say, a walk action, right, where it's my character. We'll go to the beginning. Okay, so we could have our character in, say, a stride position. And you know what? Because it's walking, I'm going to do FK on the arms. I do not want IK. So I'm going to go into my character setup, and I'm going to go to the left arm, drag that down, and the right arm, drag that down. And so I have left and right leg both set to IK mode, which is fine. And I'll just use these controls here to get my arms in the right position. Okay. Anytime you have a swinging motion, it is better to use FK versus IK, because you can get like better arcs. If you remember, arcs is one of the most important Principles of animation, very hard to get good arcs when you're using IK mode. Okay. All right, so we have this. So I'm just kind of trying to give you guys a quick explanation or demonstration here of what we can do with our action editor. So when I have this, and I press A here to select everything, and I press I to set keys, we have that pose in there, right? And let's go for a reverse. My timeline is way too long here. And notice, like in any of these editors that we create, we can zoom in and zoom out the same way we would up here, right? And we can move around the same way we would up here, right? So Alt and left click here for me, because I've emulate 3-button mouse on, or I could just middle mouse, right? And middle mouse here to move around. Control middle mouse to zoom. Control middle mouse here to zoom. And then shift middle mouse also to pan, so anyways, let's just make this a little shorter. Let's go to frame 15. We'll copy this pose, Control C. And again, taking advantage of the left-right naming convention, we can press Control Shift V to flop the pose, like so. Press I here to keyframe that, and now we have the beginnings of a walk cycle. We will want to wind up back at the same frame. So I'll go to frame. Instead of pressing Control Shift V, I'll just press regular Control V, and it'll copy the original pose, like so. Right? And then I still have to keyframe that. Okay, I'm going to back up, Control Z. I'm going to show you another way we can do it. What makes the dope sheet really handy. I can select this loop row of keys. I don't know exactly how, to be honest with you. Mainly because I know how to do it with right click selection mode. I don't know how to do it with left click selection mode. But there should be a way for me. Oh, there we go. Yeah, so if I hold down Control and click on the okay, it worked. Thought it worked. Okay, so I have to be careful how I do it. If I hold down Control and click, make sure I'm clicking on one of the keys. Or no. I don't know why it's working sometimes and not other times, to be honest with you. Sometimes selecting these keys as well, and sometimes just selecting these keys. But I want to just select this strip of keys. So I basically, by clicking in between two of the keys here along this row, or this column I should say, it is giving me a selection of this vertical column. So anyways, what I can do, if you remember, you can press Shift D to duplicate up here in our 3D viewport when we're duplicating objects. You can actually do the same thing with keys. So I'm going to press Shift D here, and you'll see it immediately goes into move mode. And I can just click and drag this, and now you'll see we start with this pose, we drag to the stride, to the next stride, and then we go back to the original, right? All I need to kind of start finalizing this, actually let's move this out. It's going to change the timing a little bit. So it's a little... Yeah, I cannot figure this out, and I'm tempted to just go back to right click. It's such a important thing to be able to do. select columns on selected keys. Okay, so I can click one of them and then press K. So you can go to select and you'll see that the option is column on selected keys. So I can select one of these keys and click K to select the rest of the column. Not quite as easy as it used to be, or it would be if I was in right-click selection mode, but not that difficult. So I'm just going to move this over one more just by pressing G. So again, G, R will not work for obvious reasons, but G will work and S will also work incidentally. So if I selected this as well, if I select these guys and do this, I have these two selected and I can scale them actually to wherever my time marker is here. So I can actually press scale and you see it will scale the distribution of those keys, and that's just a timing thing, right? So this helps me kind of make that first stride slower and then the last part a lot faster. Control Z just to go back to what I had before. So the dope sheet and the action editor by extension, generally speaking, and just to show you, the dope sheet's giving us the same thing. It just doesn't give us individual control over separated actions. So anyways, the dope sheet's the primary purpose is to really play with timing. We can select just one element, so just the foot, for example, or just say this part of the wrist. Okay, and that's my active element, so you see it's highlighted here. And I can adjust the timing on that specifically. So I could say I want this to kind of be a beat slower. Let's just say that's what I want to do. All right, so we'll see now this will drag. See how it's moving after the fact a little bit? So we can kind of play with the timing here when we need to and get a little bit more specific. So that's what the dope sheet is primarily for, and then the action editor is for managing multiple animation states. So let's just finish our walk cycle quickly here. And let's get our proper stride position. So left step forward, so left foot will be planted, will remain planted on the ground. So we'll select that, just Alt R on the rotation here and here. Alt R here. Just move this. Okay, let's get the body up. Back a little bit. All right, so that's basically it. We'll want to press A here to select everything, right? That's our stride position. We'll press Control I to set a keyframe first and foremost. Okay, and then with all this selected, we can Control C to copy the pose, and then we'll move forward here to where we need our other stride position, about frame 24. And we can press Control Shift V to flop that pose. Don't forget to keyframe it. So press I here to set a key. And so now we have our basic walk. And if we set our frame range here, and this is why we also want an animation, a timeline, right? So we have our dope sheet, but this doesn't give us the ability to easily change our frame range. So let's add a timeline. Whoops. And I forget I can't press Control Z for this kind of stuff. So set this to dope sheet. We'll drag a new window here, and we'll set this one to a timeline. Okay, and then now here in the timeline, we have access to the frame range. I'll just set this to go to frame 31. Okay, so right before we duplicate that first frame. Okay, so now it should cycle perfectly. And that's not a bad walk. Like, you know, for me just making basically two poses, right? Two poses and flopping each of them. We have a basic start of a walk cycle. And it's, remember, just the stride position, right, that we talked about last year. So having that stride position, and remember the arms are opposite to the legs. So when the left leg is forward, the left arm is back. And then when the right arm is forward, the right leg is back. Okay, I see a lot of walk cycles where, you know, the left leg goes forward and the left arm is swinging forward as well. Very unnatural looking walk. All you have to do is walk around in your own house to see how you operate. There's a very kind of like a counterbalancing thing happening. That should happen. All right, so we have that. Proper stride, all looks pretty good. And so now we have a walk, but let's say we also want to have an idle. Okay, so let's just click on here. You'll see that there's actually a bunch of actions already, and these are part of the rigging process. There's a way to use actions for kind of pre-driven animation sequences. So like when something happens, you kind of tell the bones how they should move and when they should move and all that kind of stuff. It's actually very, very powerful, but we're not going to really discuss that too much right now. But what we'll do is make a new action. So we have our walk. We'll just hit, we can either hit the X here, or hit the new action. Let's just click the new action, like there. And it's going to duplicate the action you have, and then just give it a .001, as Blender does. So if I click here, you'll see we have our walk, and then we have our walk 001. I'm going to select everything in walk 001. Make sure you have the original, right? But then in walk 001, I'll just press A here to select all these keyframes, and I'll delete them. Okay, and then I will go for go back to walk 001. Okay, let's give us a new name. We'll call it idle. Incidentally, this is not going to be as useful for importing directly into your games, but for if you were to use, say, Unity or Unreal, this makes it really easy to kind of have one character with multiple animations, because when you have actions, all your animations set up as actions, it makes that process way, way faster. And so that's basically how I manage all my animations for the game stuff I do. So if I have all this selected, and if I press Alt R to clear out the rotations, Alt G to clear out the translations, I have my character back in their default pose. And now what I want to do is just have like a simple idle animation. So we can have kind of just get that first pose. Usually in an idle, you know, you probably want to have the weight more so distributed on one hip. Let's see if we can get our hip swing. There we go, this one. Okay, so we want to have this kind of dynamic, maybe not too extreme, but something like that, you know, where the more of the weight is kind of distributed on one leg. Rotate this out on Z a little bit. G, Shift Z to kind of move this around. Let's rotate this on Z also. Rotate this on its local axis. For something like this, actually, if I wanted to have the hand on the hip, I would probably want to go FK mode, or sorry, IK mode. But let's just say we have something like this. So I'm pressing Y here twice. Y, Y. So R, Y, Y. And what that does, that's first going to give me the global axis, or whatever axis my default transformation is. And the second time it'll give me the local axis. So whatever the Y of the bone is. So that's kind of pointing directly along the bone. So that allows me to kind of pivot the head like so. And there's a look at thing. Something she's looking at. Is it this? No. It should be a target that she's looking at. It might be part of the head controls, so I might need to show that. Face primary, there we go. So anyways, let's just say we kind of worked on this and we had like a solid pose and we were happy with it. I'm going to select everything here, press A, press I, set some keyframes. And we'll just, an idle animation starts one way and it ends one way. So it's a looping cycle. So we'll just go decide how long we want it to be. Let's say 50 frames. You know what, just for this sake of like keeping this simple, I'll make it the same length. So about 32 frames here. We'll just press I again. Okay, of course I could have also duplicated these, right? So I could have pressed Shift D and duplicate this and place that. I could have done it that way as well. There's so many different ways you can kind of approach this stuff. All right, so now we need some kind of in between, some kind of breakdown from here. So the easiest thing, and it's going to look really bad, but the easiest thing would be to copy and invert the pose. So if I press A, Control C, and then Control Shift V, and I press I, now she'll kind of go like da-da-da-da-da, back and forth. We could have like a cool little dance now going or something. but yeah, so that would be the easiest. What I'm going to do, I'm going to just kind of grab a frame like right here or so, something like that. And I'll press Control C on this frame, right? So this in between transition, and go here and press Control V to paste that. And then I'll override these keyframes with this one by pressing I. And even that is probably not what I want. So just select one of these. I'll press K to select the whole column, and then I'll press X to delete those keyframes. And let's just kind of like come up with whatever it is that we actually want to do here. So let's go R, Z. Let's have her maybe look. Can have her look kind of one way and then the other way. Oh, by the way, I saw Encanto over the weekend. It's actually really, really good. Okay. All right. And the kind of the important thing to remember with idle animations though is don't try to kind of throw too much in all at once. You know, take your time, you know, and be very deliberate about the different movements you want your character to have. So let's press A here to select everything, and then press I and key that so we can have. But so this is a start. It's too much. It's so this is kind of like we need to bring this out. We need to hold on to this pose a little longer. Maybe choose a almost there version of the pose. So here's our pose. So if we wanted to hit this pose and then settle back into something like this, what we can do is take one of these transitional poses when we're almost at that extreme, like here, right? And press Control C, copy that pose. And then imagine we hit the extreme and then we settle back down into to that pose you want to hold, and we'll just paste it here. Control V to paste it. I. Okay, so now she'll hit the pose and gradually settle back. Our timeline here is not showing the whole animation, so I'm just scrubbing my timeline here in my animation timeline editor. I'm just changing the frame range here. If you don't want to do it through here, you can also do it in our render settings. So in our scene settings or our output settings, our output properties, you'll see we have our frame start, frame end parameter here that we can tweak. You can also adjust the frame rate. Okay. Generally speaking, we want to hit a pose and then hold that pose for a bit. So I'll take this, right, and I'll just press Shift D to just hold on to that pose for a little while before she goes back. And maybe that's too long. But I can press G here and I can adjust the timing and evaluate. I'm turn off my viewport overlays up here. Press move this around. Okay, so, and I can be like, okay, I'm happy with this. There's a couple of unnatural things happening right now. When people kind of look, turn their head, they almost always blink. So we need to kind of get that going. Press I here. Is that a key? Whoop, did I not get both of them? Or I keyed the wrong thing. There we go. What? Did something wrong. Oh, I keyed the wrong thing. I need this and this. Okay, so we blink. We want to kind of hold that blink, or we can, and then we'll have another kind of blink here. I can actually just take these, Shift D, duplicate them to where I want her to blink again. Okay, and it's still reading a little stiff. Why is it stiff? Because everything's happening at exactly the same time. We do want to have a kind of a, we want to mess with the timing a little bit. So we want to have things happen at different rates. So that's pretty easy to fix. So we could have like the maybe the hips go first and then the arms a little bit later. So I could take this part of the arm. I could shift these later so they happen a beat slower. Right, maybe that's too slow. Just pressing G here to adjust the timing. And I'm like thinking maybe I want this arm to go a little more out here. I just hit I here to key it. Okay, so this is where we can go in and start kind of successively breaking our forms to get overlapping action. So I could take this forearm now and I could say to this, you're gonna happen even a beat slower than those other two things. Just shift those over. And it's kind of hard because of this arm only bends on one axis, so I won't be able to tell. So what I'd actually need to do is have this arm So delete this keyframe. Actually, delete this keyframe. So it'll happen, it'll come down more gradually, right? So see how it's gonna lerp from here to here. It's gonna gradually go from this extreme or this pose to that pose. See how I have a bit more of a natural kind of flow to that arm. Ba-da-da-da-da. But that hand is a bit problematic. So this hand here, we'll want it to probably kind of flare out a little bit more. It'll drag back here, so we'll want it to kind of drag. So I here to set that keyframe. So it's dragging and then it comes out, and then here it's actually gonna reverse I again. Okay, so now I have, so this is what we can do with FK mode that we wouldn't be able to do as easily with IK. Right? It's not a proper movement, right? It looks good in isolation, but it doesn't look good with everything else because it doesn't match, you know, what she's doing. But yeah, that is kind of how we can start working with this and all that. Okay. One other thing that we'll do, and this is kind of for further tweaking, refinement, and really kind of getting into our that performance or animation that we really want, is we can add a new editor. Okay, so we have our timeline, we have our dope sheet, right, which we've set to action editor, and sorry, one other thing, our action editor here. So we have our walk. So if you look at our walk is still intact, right? It's still kind of there. It doesn't interfere. Because I did some stuff to the face that I hadn't keyed for my walk cycle, it's just going to take whatever whatever I left for the state of the animation bones for the face, and just kind of additively put that on top of whatever I already had. I actually kind of like it. So I could press A here, key everything, I. All right, do the same thing here. Key everything I, key everything here I, key everything here I, key everything here. And now that head pose is going to be baked into my animation. And I could also do things like take this and press Control C on this, and Control Shift V. I kind of get a weird result on this. I expected it to go to the other side, but it didn't, just went up. Sometimes that happens. Usually it's okay though. But I could move this, say here, and key that. So now she's looking back and forth. So different things we could kind of play with to make these animations a little bit more. Actually, I do not like that. So we could just have, you know, the animation working a little bit more nicely. I have to set my frame range here again for that cycle to work properly. Okay, and then and again we can go back to our idle, and our idle is also good to go. Our idle needs a bit more time to work with. Okay, but you see how those animations live kind of independently of each other. And then what I can do is when I export this, say these guys, just for the sake of like cleanliness, I'm actually going to get rid of them. I'll show you how we can do a little bit of cleaning in our Blender files, and don't expect you to do this, but it's useful. In our outliner here, usually we're just looking at scenes, elements in our scene, but we actually can dive into our actual blend file as well. So here, I can click on this, I can kind of put a filter for scenes, view layers, video sequencer, blend file, etc. So I'm going to actually go for the Blender file itself, and I can go to actions, and this is going to list all my different actions. So I'm just going to get rid of some of these. Hopefully it doesn't break the rig. Let me save this first. Save as. Okay. All right, and so what we can do is we can actually delete all these actions. I can select one. So actions are basically all of the animation actions that live within my scene. Let's get rid of all these. I'll just delete them. Okay, now I just have these two left. Okay. And that's going to cause some problems somewhere in my rig, I'm sure, if I were to try to animate something. So for you guys, don't do that. But for my purposes, for the type of animation that I wanted to do, it just made sense to do that. So now I can more easily manage the different animation states that I have. And then, of course, I could add my attack or whatever, or my punch or jump, etc., etc. Okay. So I'll actually do that. Just give me 1 second. I have an alarm going, and I'm just going to turn it off. Hold on 1 second. Okay, I'm back. All right, so let's make one more action. Let's make it attack. Okay, and again, we'll want to start from, usually we'll start our animations if, you know, sometimes it's good to start from our idle pose. But I'm just going to go ahead and delete these keyframes. I will go to my idle. Just get that first idle pose. Press A here. Copy it. Go into my attack. And press Control V here. So this might be in and out of your idle, your attack, or it might be in and out of your walk state or whatever it is, but you'll want to kind of plan where you want your animations to kind of flow from. So here I'll just press I to key in that idle pose, and I will just get rid of each of these columns here. Okay, so we have this start for our idle, for our attack. And now we'll take a look at a couple of the other editors that we have. So we also have our graph editor. Okay, so this is another animation editor. So I'm going to switch this one into a graph editor. Okay, and our graph editor, we were looking at it last week. This allows us to basically go in and plot out the animation interpolation curve of each of our elements. So we can have even more control space here, by the way, over any of our windows to make it go full screen. Okay, actually I'm going to set this back to, you'll see that the action I've added there is the attack. I'm going to set this back to my scene view though. All right, and now I'm going to bring in a video as well. So I have to decide where I'm going to put that. I'll probably put this up here. So I'll just drag down, and I'm going to change this into a video sequencer. Okay. I'll just control spacebar on the video sequencer so we can kind of see what it looks like. So again, this is the video sequencer editor. It's one of our general editors. Okay, second from the bottom under general editors, video sequencer. You'll notice there's hotkeys to jump immediately into each of these editors too. Shift F8 here. For that one, I don't use that. I've never memorized those. But you'll see our default view is just the sequencer. So it's just like, it's kind of like Premiere, where we can drop in like an image or a video file, or even a scene, a different scene from Blender. So you can actually kind of start pulling things together in an interesting way that way as well. But what we want to do is change from sequencer mode to sequencer/preview or just preview. But for now, we'll go for sequencer/preview. Okay, and now we're going to have, you'll see this viewport up top. Okay, so now I'm going to pull in a video reference by pressing Shift A, right, which we use to add new objects. It's the same here. I can also go up to add here. Okay, and you'll see my add options are as such. But I'm going to press Shift A. And I'm going to go for a movie. And again, apologies to Jack. We have a reference of Jack doing a animation way back in the day when we were in person. But so this is Jack kind of doing an attack. Boom. That rhymes. So we have Jack doing an attack. And we're going to use this as reference for our animation. Okay, so I'll press Control Spacebar here. We have this. We can change our video sequencer to just preview mode. All right, so we have a bigger kind of sense of what that looks like. And now we can go through and we can say, okay, let us use that for timing and pose reference for animating my character. I do strongly suggest that you actually make some thumbnails. So rather than just copying exactly the poses that you see, it's a good idea to go in and sketch on paper or maybe even in grease pencil what those poses might be, so that you can exaggerate it if you need to or whatever, right? So I'll just kind of quickly do that so we can kind of have a sense of where we're going to go with this. We'll do we'll synthesize this information and adapt it to what we need to do for our character. So let's go to front view for the character here. Maybe a side view, assuming that our character is attacking forwards. So let's go to an orthographic side view here. I'm going to go and add a new object. So get out of pose mode, go to object mode. I'll press, move my 3D cursor up here. I'll press Shift A. I'll add a grease pencil, a blank grease pencil. And I'm really just doing this primarily to show that part of the planning needs to be those thumbnails. So I'll draw. And Make sure I have a layer, and make sure I have a material. Okay, grease pencil material. Okay, let's test this out. I'm going to set my strength on my brush here to 100%, and I'm going to turn off the pressure dynamics on the strength. I'll leave it on for the radius. Okay, let's hide that. Okay, so what I want to do, again, I'm going to synthesize the poses I'm seeing here from Jack. So you just get that line of action first and foremost, get the tilt of the shoulders, get those arm positions. Okay. Can exaggerate. His arm is pretty limp here, but we can, you know, maybe suggest more of a kind of stronger dynamic kind of pose there. I think Jack was pretending to be a troll or something like that. I think that was the brief. So guys, if we were in person, I would have one of you volunteer. As our actor. Okay, so thinking about rhythm, flow, we can optimize this, right? So we can take our reference, like I said, we can synthesize, adjust it. We can maybe think of maybe there's more of a turning away of the body. Initially, head maybe can still be forwards, right? And this could be part of our anticipation. So she's going to be here, she'll lean back. Let's have her maybe lean back to begin. Okay, so her body's twisting. Hips are forward, upper body is backwards, tilting backwards, and this arm is getting ready to do some damage. One leg will be forward, the other leg will be okay. So I do like this the twist that's happening in the torso, and if you remember back to the flour sack last semester, this is why we did it. Right, so this part's tilting this way, and this part is tilting this way, right? In that body. For to draw through. Hopefully that's clear. Okay, and then we'll step forward a little bit. So even more of an anticipation. As soon as I start drawing again, I'm going to get a new grease pencil. So this drawing will disappear. I do want to turn on some of my settings, and some of them might be on by default. So onion skinning. Sometimes I have to turn that on up here as well. Or is it our viewport overlays? Onion skin, make sure it's on in our viewport overlays as well. Hopefully this will work. So we're going to have even... that did not seem to work. So what went wrong here? Let's see. Scroll down a little bit. Onion skin, opacity, let's make that lower. I'm gonna change my in my dope sheet, or you remember you can also get the grease pencil, so I can kind of see what's going on here. It's not creating a new instance, and that's probably the issue. So I think there's a setting somewhere to auto make a new instance. That must be turned off. and that's different functionality that I'm accustomed to. It's probably a setting. What's going on here? I'm gonna go to edit preferences, interface, animation. Grease pencil. So it's either a bug or just a setting that I'm not aware of somewhere that I need to change. Relations. Draw. Okay, looks like I manually add a keyframe, but yeah, I'll just press I here to manually add a new keyframe. Insert blank keyframe on the active layer. That's actually, I like that better. I like having control over it because I do want to be able to draw on the previous drawing, even if I'm not on the same frame. Again, I'm used to a different default behavior. So now we can kind of lean back a little bit. Say this arm that was starting to twist, the body, let's say the body's starting to open up. So instead of the upper body turning away, we can kind of start tilting more forward. So again, this is to mainly say that we have to have our video reference. Absolutely, we need that. But then beyond that, I strongly recommend that you also continue to hone and adjust that reference using thumbnails. Okay, so we're not totally reliant. Okay, I'll go ahead here, hit I, insert a new blank frame. The body, look at that curvature here through the body. I'll have the arm here bend this way to make it look even more like powerful. So it's coming, but it's also even dragging back, and then whoom, we'll have a stronger follow through and impact. So I'm getting the timing here, but I'm adjusting the poses, you know, so that it's gonna be a little bit more of what I want. Nice drag here. So let's get one more. Oops, gotta press I here. Insert a new keyframe. This leg has come off the ground. Body's starting to kind of move. Turn like that. Could get some nice smearing going on. We could kind of have like a bend in that arm, like use the rubber hose type arm setup to get something interesting here if we want it. And if we only kind of hold it for like a couple frames here and there, you will not even pick up on it. It'll feel right, but you know, and you won't pick up on the fact that things are getting smeary and distorted. Okay, here I think his arm, he should start extending it. So instead of keeping his elbow bent, his arm should start to kind of go out, extend, and kind of like impact even further out. So here we'll kind of press I. And which leg took that step? So the near leg stepped all the way from here. Notice the back foot all the way here, and then see how it goes all the way in front. Boom. So we want to kind of get that going. Okay, taking some artistic liberties here in terms of my posing choices. Kind of really get into kind of where he landed here. Body all the way down. Arm, let's say, boom, all the way up. That's the impact time, boom. And can have like figure out what this pose would be in between these two. To again further kind of drive home that the strength of that impact. Can really have a lot of drag here. It's probably a little too extreme, but let's have the arm kind of opening back out. Let's get our eraser T for tools, eraser. Okay, and so now we have basically a boom, a nice little sequence that we can kind of go with. Oh, you can even hear me in the video there. Yeah, okay. All right, so and then our recovery, get back up after, right? So we can again plan all of that out. Boom. Kind of go down and then kind of have like a bit of a settle. All right, where the body starts to come back up. Leg is still here, leg is still here, but the body is starting to kind of come back up. The arm is starting to come back down. This arm is starting to kind of come out of the attack that it did. The head's starting to lift. Let's go into our eraser here. Okay, and the body is now starting to lift up. His legs are starting to push off. Okay, and ultimately we want to come back to our initial kind of pose. My scaling is all over the place, which is maybe a problem in some cases, but because I'm, you know, kind of working in 3D, I don't have to worry. You know, unless I'm deliberately scaling my character up and down to match my thumbnails, which I would be super illogical, and I wouldn't do that. I don't have to worry about scale issues when working with a 3D character. One of the nice perks of working in 3D versus 2D. So let's go back to our character. Get to pose mode. All right. So in terms of our assignment, in terms of our weekly activity, I'd like for you guys to film your reference videos and have that as part of your post. Have any thumbnails that you generate as also part of your post. And then I'd like to see an initial block out on 2 of your animations. So to clarify, I want you to plan out all of your animations. So get all your reference videos in, right? Do all your thumbnails or whatever thumbnails you feel you need. And then block out 2 of your animations at the least, okay? So it could be the idle, could be the walk. It's up to you. So basically, looking at this, let us take our character and let's start blocking it out. Just like we did last week, we're going to work on step tangents. So we're not going to spline it out immediately. We're going to kind of work staccato, pose to pose to pose to pose. Make sure it reads properly, make sure our timing's solid and everything like that. We should be fine because we have a good reference that we're following. And we can kind of go from there. I can keep that video if I want for the sake of kind of comparing notes. So I can take this as a base and kind of work off of that. But let us start getting into this. So we're going to have this. Actually do that here. Rotate. So she's going to do initial kind of like push forward. A to select everything. I to key everything. And then we're going to kind of step for a few frames forward, and we'll have our character start lifting up their foot. One other thing we'll do actually, go back to a side view here. I'm going to go and I'm going to make a new window here. So we'll have two 3D viewports. One we'll just kind of keep fixed, and one will kind of go in and be able to adjust. So this is kind of my recommended setup. We want to kind of have a preview camera. If you're doing a side scroller, make sure that your camera is to the side so you can kind of get a good sense of how your character will read in game. If you're having more of an isometric view, go to isometric view. Turn off your viewport overlays in that particular view so you can kind of see what this is all going to look like, and then have another 3D viewport here where you are actually doing the actual animation. Okay, so one where you can evaluate the results, and then one where you can kind of just more so work out the pose. All right, so we're going to, in this frame, G, Shift X, start moving this up. All right, so let's key that. So the first few poses is going to be that taking a step into that initial. We're just kind of getting to that point where we can do the anticipation. Okay, we're going to change this from our grease pencil back to our, say, action editor. Make sure we're in our attack animation. Just adjust my timing a little bit here, move that over some. And we're going to get into this pose. So we're going to tilt the body away. Like so. Have the hips face forward a little bit. Move this foot back. Clear out any rotations. Rotate, whoops, not too much. Rotate the body. Let's go into the hip swing. Bone. Clear out any rotation on that. And probably a little bit too much of an extreme rotation here on the bones in the chest. Okay, let's go into a side view here. So we can kind of preview this and see how we're doing. Lean back. Okay, so I'm looking for the silhouette here. I'm trying to match silhouettes, you know, as best as possible. This leg needs to rotate R, Y, oops, or Z. And this leg needs to come out more and also rotate on Z. I want to make sure the character looks on balance, so just making sure those legs are in the right spot. The knees, use my pull vectors here to kind of just change the orientation of the knees. Right, and it's really just about comparison. Like, let's evaluate, how does this look relative to my thumbnail, or how does it look relative to my reference video? Is it reading properly, yes or no, right? And that's basically what it is, and kind of continue to adjust accordingly. What's the head doing? That's going to kind of really help sell this as well. Let's have the head rotate. The eyes, whatever the eyes are doing, is also going to be important. And there's some things we can do, like we can make our eyes, I believe. So we'll bring up my navigation panel and my character settings. You can make the eyes, you can change what they move with. Eye target parent, I can make it the head, or I can make it the torso, or I can make it the root. So that's what I've just done there. I just made the eyes follow the root. And I don't even know where they went, the eye target. Oh, here it is. Yeah, so now whatever I do with the body, right? Those eyes will always kind of keep looking where they're supposed to look. It's focused on something. All right, so we can say that we're there. We can kind of like this. Actually, like it from this angle. I think that's pretty solid. Probably would want to, you know, do some fists. You know, kind of curl those fingers up. Probably easy ways of doing it. It's good to, you know, hide as much complexity as you can, but if you do need those fingers, you will have to reveal the finger controls. an easy way. Let's see if there's an easy way to curl these. So I can rotate from there. I can scale. Okay, there's no easy way to curl. So what I can do is I can just select each of these joints. Okay, and change my rotation mode to individual elements, or pivot point to individual elements, and change the transform orientation to local. If I press RX here, you'll see we can kind of get that nice curl on the fist. Okay, and if I want to do the same on the other hand, I can, but I think just the one hand, it actually works. I probably would want more of a spreading out of the other hand, the fingers on the other hand. So I could probably take this. Is there not one for the thumb? Okay, and of course, you know, the ponytail. I do expect you're going to animate the ponytail as well. And to show that I expect it, I'm going to do it myself. Let's get the hair control on. Yes, that's assuming, of course, you're using this character. So just press A here, select everything, and then press I to key that. So we have these different poses. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to go in. I'm going to make sure there's no interpolations by selecting everything here and just pressing T to change our transformation mode and set it to constant. So again, this is something we can do in our graph editor. Okay, let's see this. So we can kind of see that. Okay, and then we'll just basically keep going through referencing our thumbnails and or any other poses from here, and then blocking out our animation from start to finish. Okay, that's all I expect for this week. So block out, Joshua, I see a question. The block out is simply this, having our stepped animation. So da, 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 right? Just making sure you match up to the poses, your keys, your breakdowns, your extremes. Okay, so that's what we'll plot out, kind of reference those, have our thumbs. We'll have our video reference for timing. And then we'll go through and we will just make sure that our character is doing the right thing at the appropriate time. Okay, one thing I'm going to probably do, just in my video sequence editor here, I'm going to push the video to be a little later. Okay, so I have a little bit more time to get into those initial actions. And then I'm going to also do that with my grease pencil. Just select my grease pencil object. I'll just move it over a little bit so that I don't have to rush these first few poses until I get into my attack. Right? So basically what we're going to do is not have a fully splined out animation. We're just going to have our stepped animation, our blocked out animation. This is what I consider an animation block out, where it kind of looks like not fluid, but it's just pose to pose to pose to pose. Okay, the purpose of that is just making sure that our timing works, not getting kind of like mixed up by kind of swimmy looking fluid animation, because it makes it a little harder to evaluate whether or not we have the right primary poses down when things are kind of flowing really kind of naturally everywhere. So this will give us a really kind of strong kind of breakdown, and we want to do as much of this as we can. and get it as far as we can, just breaking it down. And then we can turn on our splines after, and then kind of do our final cleanup and final touches. Okay, and that's something that we'll also want to do. I can talk about that more next week, or we can get into it today. I do want to give you guys a little bit of a shorter class. So why don't we go for about 20 more minutes or so, and then we'll call it a day. If there's big questions, let me know. But I want to give you guys a bit of time that you can even get started on this and even get it spoken to, get it in for the week, and not have to worry about it. All right, so basically what we'll do now is we'll just do a few more poses. Okay, and so we have this pose, and we want to get this pose. All right, so it's a bit more of a lean back, even more extreme. You could say maybe the hips are down a little lower against that back leg. This arm is starting to lift up and signal its intention. Okay, so again, using this one to evaluate something without all the controls that are very distracting. Let's get this head, rotate. Facial expression, obviously, it would go a long way here too as well. If the head is moving back, the hair is moving this way, inwards. Okay, this arm is starting to come up. Alt-R, clear out the rotation on that actually. It's kind of a good pose actually. It's not exactly what I was intending, but I will take it. I think it works. It's more dynamic. More looks like she's gonna throw something, but I think it works for the attack as well. Good rhythm here through the body as well. Like, this is not ideal, I guess. Maybe actually I'll take this and I'll clear out the rotation on that as well. Now you see I have this like nice kind of simple line through the body, like any kind of like lines of action that we can have through our character is always nice. Think of S curves, C curves, that kind of stuff, right? That kind of thing is basically what you can build in that way. And I think that is good. Press A, press I, key everything. Okay, so we can kind of step through. And that looks good. That body's really tilted in an unnatural way, but let's say it works. Ah, that's cool. Nice dynamic pose there too. I think that works really nicely. All right, so let's continue forward. Let's drag our timeline and should look for our next pose. So now she's starting to come up and out of the crouch. So let's get the hip here, move that up. Notice how the hip is like kind of where I start a lot of my movements with, because what the hip does is kind of one of the primary drivers of any action that we might have in the body. Let's clear out the rotation on that. R, Z. Oh, I have my rotation mode rotation set to local by default there. Alt R here. Okay, and here I was gonna have the arm kind of break. It's unnatural, but let's see if we can get away with it. Arm's a little bit broken there. It's Alt R here. Alt R here to clear out any rotations. There's going to be a clavicle that I can move as well. I feel like I need a clavicle to get that shoulder up. There we go. Let's clear Alt R here. There we go. R, Y, Y. Whoops. Oh, I didn't key that. Whoops. Oh no. I pressed spacebar by accident before I copied keyframed it. Okay, good. I was able to control Z back to the point where I was. Let's press everything here. Let's keyframe that just in case. I'm not done with the pose, but let's clear out any rotation here on the head temporarily, and here. Let's get our neck going. Okay, so because the body's moving forward now, the ponytail will kind of be dragging this way now. Let's move our pull target, J. We can start to have this foot come off the ground. So see how I have that nice arc here I'm starting to lose in the body. Let's see if we can rotate the hips a little bit. Start bringing some of that back. And the torso. Can I move this? G. Yeah, I can actually press G to move the shoulder, so I can kind of even get a better pose. Okay, let's grab all of this and press I. Okay, let's preview this. Boom. That's gonna work. I think that's actually really going in a nice direction. Can really see the drag here happening on the arm. I think that's breaking of the joint backwards was a good choice. We can really see, you know, when we scrub through, this is how, like, when we're with the animation, remember we go frame to frame, just say, does this work? And this is what we can do when we work this way, what we can't do when we work the other way. I do have some interpolation happening on the ponytail. That's incidental, just because I turned on the visibility after I started kind of setting some keyframes on some other things, so it's not keyed throughout. But I mean, that kind of still even looks good. But just to keep it all consistent, I'm going to press A here with everything selected, and I'll press A here and then T to set everything to constant mode. So now even the ponytail will snap in time. Okay, and then that's basically it. We just keep going with this process, kind of find our next pose, which is this. And it all comes together fairly quickly, at least in terms of blockouts, right? So Ricardo, we'll take a look at that. I'm not 100% certain on what that process looks like, but yes, we'll take a look at how you might export each of the different OBJs for kind of transformations later. So let's go to this pose. By this point, this foot is up off the ground, kind of starting to come forward. Okay, hip is gonna be like this. Body's starting to lean. And there's some settings we can do on the head to as well, so that it doesn't move with the body, so it stays stationary in terms of its rotation. I might have wanted to turn something like that on, but it's okay. This arm and the body is actually starting to swing the other way. It's starting to go like this, rotate. Let's Alt R here on the arm. And I'm just going to even do it myself just to see what that movement, that action feels like. So I can almost imagine if I clear out any rotation. Grab this shoulder, Alt G, Alt R. So if I were to rotate this, then I need to, I'm just doing it myself, and I recommend you do this too, and just see what your body does. And so I'm copying this action, and I'll rotate this forward like so. And then I'll rotate on Y 90 degrees like so. And then I'll rotate upwards. Do have to worry about sometimes gimbal lock can be an issue with these kinds of things, but we're using quaternion rotations, I imagine, for the shoulders, so so that kind of stuff's mostly sorted out. Okay. The arm's not super clear of the body in terms of silhouette. You could cheat stuff, so I can actually move this whole joint up. I could, you know, really get extreme with it. Or I could turn on my stretchy controls as well. silhouette wise, the ponytail and the arm are kind of getting lost with each other. Okay. And for this, let's grab that other shoulder. Just rotate that backwards. Kind of a funny looking pose. I think the weight here needs to be more on this leg. So let's just move the whole body over like so. See what this looks like from the side. It's kind of close. Let's just key that for now. Let's see what's next. Okay, let's evaluate this to that. So like I said, see how the hair and the hand and the hair kind of get lost in each other? Not a huge fan of that. So I might even just adjust the silhouette here even more to bring this up more. Just so that that reads a little stronger. Okay, now we're way forward. This foot, Alt R, is way forward like this. Probably need a breakdown. Whoa, look at that leg. Probably need a bit of a breakdown to help this read even better, but I think we should be okay. Torso starting to turn over even more. And I can scale this stuff up, right? So I can actually like cheat a little bit, emphasize some things, but I'm not going to. I could though, I could. I'm tempted to. But I haven't been doing it, so I'm not going to start now. Right, so that's pretty good. I think this arm, we need to just lift this up. And I mean, it's pretty straightforward what I'm doing here at this point. I'm just continuing with that same approach over and over and over again. Just kind of try to get closer and closer to my thumbnails, my reference. Select everything here. Okay. And then let's say we've blocked it out. We feel good about the block out. Everything's reading properly. Our next step will be to go into our, you know, we can time things out with our dope sheet or our animation timeline here. All right, so we can go into our dope sheet and our action editor, and we can kind of play with our timing here, kind of shift things around and just make sure that, you know, on playback it looks correct. Let's adjust our time range here. So that stuff at the beginning feels a little too rushed. So let's select this, press K, and just move it out. Oops. Move this out. Okay. So this is our kind of getting starting high level, and we're going to get progressively more granular in terms of like the type of editing that we do. So here's my initial idle pose. Go down a little bit and then go back. I would probably need a little bit more space in between these two. That's a pretty big jump as well. One thing also to be considerate of in a game animation is, you know, anticipation is a really important animation principle. We can only like get away with so much of it in a video game before the player might get frustrated, because if your player presses attack and your character takes, you know, 30 frames to kind of get into their actual attack, that can get pretty annoying, you know, as a player. So so something to be mindful of as well. I'm gonna take this foot orientation. I want this version of the orientation, this rotation, and I want to copy it to an earlier version. So I'm just going to do that in my action editor here. I'll just select this, Shift D, and I'll just overwrite the other one. So you'll see that there the foot starts already rotating. Yeah. Okay, so that's our first kind of pass. It's like a little more granular. It's kind of, once we blocked out all our poses, then we might offset the timing on some things here and there. We might, you know, make the foot rotation, you know, that foot rotation, we can make it happen a little sooner or a little later, right? Depending. So up until now, we've been keying everything at the same time. Right, but we could start offsetting the changes in things a little bit. Okay, in order to kind of make everything look a little bit more believable, a little bit more natural. So we'll want to kind of do that a few times. Ideally, we do a second pass. Once we've blocked it out, we'll do a second pass on our block out. No interpolation, but just to get in our overlapping actions, our anticipations if we need them, any kind of follow throughs, that kind of stuff. Like, we want to really nail that stuff down. And then once we're all happy with that, then we can take everything, right, and then basically start splining everything out. Okay, so let's save this. This will be my block out. So file, save as. Let's do this fall. Block out. Save as. And then once all that's good, then we can start splining it out. So that's basically going in here into our graph editor, selecting everything here and just pressing T. We can start with linear mode just to see what that looks like. It's not going to be very good. Everything's going to kind of snap, snap, snap. You'll see I get some weird stuff going on with the arms here just because I had to do some funky rotations to get that to work. So I'd have to go in and make sure that from here to here to here to here all reads properly, right? So that the animation curves aren't going all crazy. The easiest way to do that is basically just select this. Just take a look at the graph editor, see what's happening in the animation curves, in the rotation in particular. So I can turn off the location and the scale and just look at what's happening with the rotation. I can see, like, yes, I needed to hit this pose. Yes, I need to hit this pose. But on the way there, I get a lot of weird things happening. So I might need to kind of do some extra. So let's insert a new keyframe in here. Okay, let's see what happens if I move this up or down. And if I move this up or down. And it looks like it's this one here that I need to play with. This here, yeah. So you see I have to swing this outwards here so it doesn't intersect with the body. And then I get a nicer arc going here through the arm. And then here I might even notice on the way up, I want to straighten this arm out again. So select this forearm. Just look at the animation on this. And I would imagine the X rotation on this I need to play with. So I'm going to insert a keyframe here. And I'll just make the X kind of open up a little bit. So I get a nicer arc here through that movement. And the shoulder position as well is kind of a little weird. Feels a little kind of pushed in. So this here, this is more of a position thing, I would imagine. So just hide everything else. It's very subtle movements. But we just want to get this more in line with where we're going. Press I here, so insert a keyframe. So this is where we kind of do our finer tuning and kind of tweaks and adjustments and things like that. Okay, and I'm sorry I didn't get more of the animation in, but what I'm going to do now, if it looks okay, like in linear mode, I'm just going to start splining it out. So I'm going to select everything again and just go to Bezier. Okay, now it should be even more fluid. Still have some weird stuff happening with the arm. So from here to here is problematic now. I don't have smooth arcs, and that's the problem I'm having. So if I track the position of this, you see how it jumps up, down, and around. It's not a smooth kind of change in position. And even through here, I'm seeing that. So that's the type of thing that I might want to go in and fix. That is truthfully the type of thing that an IK solver would help with. So I might want to IK solver on for a moment and then turn it off when I want to do the arm swing. But those are the kinds of things that we want to go in and track down what's happening, why is it happening, and how can we fix it. And the easiest way to do that is just to go into the graph editor. In each of these channels, the X, Y, Z rotation corresponds to each of the local X, Y, Z rotation on our bones, right? Based on whatever its axes are. So this bone again, the y-axis, you can see points down the bone. The x is out this way, and the z is going up and down. So as I kind of go in here and shift, you can kind of see if this is where the problem lies. I had to fix this. I don't know why this didn't spline out. Set it to Bezier. That should help smooth things out a little bit. It's a little bit better. But here might need some work. So on each of these Bezier controls, now I can actually rotate the key. So I can tap R here to rotate the key, and you see how that has its own subtle effect as well. I can take one of the handles on the key, on the Bezier, and I can actually extend it or move it by pressing G, like so. So there's actually quite a lot that we can kind of still do to further fine-tune our animations. And we ultimately want to end there. We don't want to start there. Well, once we've kind of blocked everything out and we get into our kind of final pass phase, that's something that we do want to do. So I'm just not happy with the hand position there. Doesn't have a fluid arc on it, so it kind of comes back. That's good. Here it kind of dips down, comes up, and then it kind of comes down. We expect it to kind of keep going up. So the spacing is not consistently changing. So it's getting a little bit better, but I just want to get rid of that shakiness, and I think ultimately it might have to sometimes even delete a frame. So I'm going to try deleting this frame. And that works, but I think the harm still starts going through the body. Yeah, so that was the reason for that frame. So I'll have to find a better way to work around that. Maybe moving this down. Rotate this, move this. Okay, so what I'm looking for now is just to kind of get a smooth arc here in my keyframes wherever possible, and seeing if that doesn't help. So it's a bit of a balancing act between kind of getting smooth motion and kind of getting a silhouette that reads properly for the pose. Shoulders, arms in particular are going to be the most tricky to work with. Okay. All right, guys. So again, I don't want to kind of stay with this too long. I think this gives you hopefully the foundation you need to kind of keep moving forward and kind of get this animation spoken to. So let's see what's going on here. There we go. So we can move this down. Can rotate or move this down too. So I think that, yeah, much better. Kind of still sticks a little bit, but the fluid, the arcs are much nicer. I think the main thing that I would say is that the timing needs to work. This arm needs to kind of come up a little faster. It hangs back a little too long. But yeah, that is ultimately where we land. This is the kind of like our final pass of like tweaking an animation, and this is what it looks like. And I think what I would also what's kind of striking me is that I need to hold that anticipation a beat longer. So this wind up, I need to hold that this pose. It gets lost too quickly, so I think I need to elongate that pose. So what I'll do, select everything here, and I'll go into my dope sheet again. Kind of see where I want it to hold that. I want to hold it here. So I'm going to take this, select this whole row, just move it over to happen a little later. I'll take this right before it, this key right before it. I'll copy that pose, Control C, bring this marker all the way down to, say, 5 or so frames earlier, and then I'll press I. Whoops, no, sorry, Control V to paste that pose, and then I to key it in. So now I have more of a hold here to here. So it comes, then, right? So and I think I need even more than that, but yeah, I think that kind of puts me in a good solid spot. Move this over. And I think coming up to that, this to this is too fast also. Here to here. So again, what I'm showing you is that it's not like a necessarily kind of like a one-off thing and it just works. You do have to kind of play with it and fine-tune things and kind of get it to a point where you can feel good about that result. So the problem here that I'm having now is that the foot sticks. So I do like the held kind of upper arm, but I don't want the foot to stick, so I do want to keep all that moving more fluidly. So I'll just pull these all together, and I want to kind of just take the arm here and move its keys and adjust those along. But again, the rest of it is just kind of doing it. So so today we've kind of just looked at that whole process, how we set things up, how we plan it out, how we use the different editors, how we use our video sequence editor to have a kind of good timed out reference, how we can use our grease pencil or just a sheet of paper to plan out our extremes and breakdowns and keys, and then how we could just start kind of going in, blocking out our animation, right, in like this, constant mode, what that looks like, and then trying linear to start, seeing if that doesn't give us any kind of problems, and then if that all looks good, then we can kind of go into Bezier and then start finer tuning our sequence. Okay, so for our purposes, you don't have to go into Bezier. I don't expect you to. Actually, just expect to see a constant mode blockout. And that's it. Okay, so the last thing that someone asked was how would we export this for our game? From my understanding, and I've never had to do it, so I can't fully speak to it, but from my understanding, if I hide my wireframe, my armature here, if I select my character, let's just assume that gave us everything. If I select my character here, and if I go File, Export, export OBJ. I can export this as, say, frame 1. Let's see our export settings. So selection only, first and foremost. Okay, so if I check animation, I believe this will actually export each frame of the animation. You could do it that way, I guess, or you could export a specific frame. So if I believe if I just export this frame, I uncheck animation, I don't have it checked. And let's go frame 1, export OBJ. I should get an OBJ posed out like this. So if let's do another frame just to see if it works. So let's do the same thing here. Grab that, drop this. File, export OBJ. Let's call this, say, frame 10. I don't even know what frame it actually is, but let's call it frame 10. And export OBJ. Okay, so now let's open a fresh Blender. Okay, let's delete everything. File, import, OBJ. Let's navigate to this folder and let's get frame 1. Let's import both of these. Let's cross our fingers and we have this. Okay, maybe we can only import one at a time. So GX here. Let's import again. Import OBJ. Let's get this one. And there we go. Yeah, so you see it gives us each of them at the particular state they were at. Okay. So that's how that's how I imagine we would do it for our games. If you wanted to do the animation, if you wanted each frame, then you would go for File, Export, OBJ, click Animation. Let's put this in a folder in case it spits out a whole bunch of selection only, animation. Let's go export. So it'll take longer. Hopefully it doesn't do every single one of my animations. Oh. Hopefully it just does the animation states of this particular animation. Yeah. So I think it's working. It's going to probably take a while, but I imagine that's how you do it. Yes, and morph target is what you'll have to do. So I've been saying that to you guys. Morph target is the way you want to approach doing your animations. GLTF would be optimal, but I don't know if I think you're kind of going a little bit off track to some degree if you do it that way, right? So yeah, like I said, this is going to take a little while, and I truthfully don't know exactly what's going to spit out, but that is the approach that you do want to take for that. For the presentation purposes, like if you want to just show it to me, okay, it looks like it finished. Let's open our other Blender and just import and see what that gave us. You can also open this OBJ in a text editor file and just kind of see what it turns out like. I'll select all this, delete that, and File, Import, OBJ. Okay, so you see what it did. It just basically gave me a OBJ for each different frame. Okay, so you don't need them all. You don't need every single frame. That's going to slow down your engine. You just need a few. You just need your keys and breakdowns, really. Import obj. Okay. This is actually pretty cool. Could do some interesting stop motion stuff with this. But yeah, you'll basically want to morph from one of these to the next one, to the next one, to the next one, to the next one, for each of your different animations. Okay. All right. So that's basically how that works. Was there one last thing? Yes. So there's one last thing. The way we want to export this is we're going to select this. Oops. Press Alt-H here. So I'll just select my armature and my character. I'm going to go to File, Export. So GLTF. This is for when we do it, upload this onto Sketchfab. So we're just going to basically make sure on our includes it's selected only. We don't really have to do anything else. Make sure it's GLB format. And then just go ahead and export the GLB, the GLTF. And now this GLTF file we can upload to Sketchfab and it should work no problem. We can test it out. There's a website. Called sandbox.babylon.js or js.com. Sandbox.babylonjs.com. Let's open one of these. This is just how we can test, but this will also work on Sketchfab. This is just a little quicker and easier. Okay, so let's upload. And I'm not seeing, where did I export that to? Did it finish exporting? Maybe it didn't. Maybe it's still exporting. Or did I put it in the OBJ animate? Let's try this again. Let me just make sure I exported this to the right spot. File, export, GLTF, and no, I did to that folder. Let's just make a new folder, GLTF. Just give it a moment. I might have had a, oh, so it actually didn't work. So it crashed on me. So in that case, what you'll do is you'll export as a FBX file, export FBX. Okay, and then we can upload that FBX to our project. And I actually forgot to turn on my export, check my export setting as an FBX. I have to make sure it says include selected objects only. So it's going to take a minute because I do have like 3 different animations and it's a fairly complex character. It's going to take a little while for this to finish. Let's go export. Let's do this one more time. FBX. Make sure we have selected objects selected, and then just do that one more time. Give it a moment. right, cool. So let's go here. We'll upload this. We'll get our FBX. GLTF will probably work for your own characters. This character has got a lot of extra stuff going on, and it looked like the GLTF exporter is not able to handle all of it. Is that not going to work? Okay, I might be stuck with drop Sketchfab. Okay, so can try a GLTF. Ideally, GLTF to work. If GLTF does not work, then the FBX is the way to go. Let's give it a moment. And while I'm waiting for this, if you remember, we had our in our dope sheet, right? In our dope sheet editor, we changed it from dope sheet mode into action editor mode, which is basically the same, but it allows us to have multiple animation states on our character. Blender used to be a game engine way back in the day. For I believe Neo Geo, it was their internal game dev 3D package. So because of that, the way it handles animations is slightly unique relative to other animation programs, and that's why you can have these multiple animations. You can even blend animations together in Blender using the non-linear animation tool, which is something I've never really do, so I can't fully speak to how all that works. But once this is loaded, you'll see that, I hope, that those animations that we exported will be accessible within our Sketchfab project. And you can play any one of them by default. Okay, and then you can even be able to switch from animation to animation within Sketchfab. Both you as the creator and also for the audience, they should be able to see. Unless they kind of got rid of some of the animation tools for the free accounts. I'm not 100% sure. So this looks like it's going to take a little while, but ultimately what it's going to be is it's going to be, what we recall from Sketchfab, where we can have our character or our 3D scene or whatever it is, but then we can also tell it which of the animations we want it to play, or if any of the animations, or which ones we want to include in our project. Hopefully this doesn't take too much longer. Yep, Neo Geo, I believe. I could be making that up. Let me just double check. Neo Geo Blender. History. Yep, Blender was planned as an in-house application for Neo Geo. And then something happened, and it got I think it might have gotten discontinued, or somebody, the community, there was a community that raised some funds, and they were able to kind of purchase the source code and turn it open source, and that's kind of where it went from there. And for quite a while, it had a built-in game engine that they depreciated in the more recent versions of Blender. Okay, guys, I don't know how long this is going to take, and I don't want to keep you waiting, but trust me that it should work. It should work. The animations should be present. I don't want to keep you guys any longer. We've gone a little longer than I had hoped to. So let's wrap for today. If there's any questions, let me know. But ultimately, what I'm looking for from you guys for this week is just blocking out your animations. You know, take a few hours today, or take even half an hour. Just shoot your reference videos. You know, film yourself doing your idle animation, your walk cycle, your attack or jump or whatever it is, and then interacting with an object like turning a doorknob or lifting up something, or climbing onto a ledge or whatever it is. So those are the okay. Here we go. Awesome. Edit 3D settings. So that's what I'll be looking for, and then you'll take a couple of those animations. Could be the idle, could be whatever you feel is simpler, and then you just want to kind of start blocking those out. Okay, with constant. So here, see here at the bottom where it says static pose. I also have access to the walk animation that I did. I also have access to the idle animation that I made. I also have access to the attack animation that I started, that I didn't finish. All right, but that's basically it. If only it were so easy in your OpenGL games, right? It will be next year. Don't worry. So not when I say next year, I mean in your third year when you guys are using Unity or Unreal or whatever you choose to use. But for now, we have to do it a slightly different way. We're going to blend from morph target to morph target to morph target. All right, everybody. We're going to wrap here. Hopefully helpful. The main takeaway from today is just a little bit a deeper understanding of the different 3D editors and animation editors we have in Blender, and then how in particular to bring in a reference video and to work off of that. I think just seeing that, that should hopefully really clarify for you guys how straightforward it can be to animate a sequence once you have good reference. Okay, and shoot your own reference, please. Ideally, shoot yourself, or have shoot your friends, family. Have them kind of act out whatever it is that you need, and then film that yourselves. Okay. Rather than kind of saying, oh, I'm going to take this from this game or from this movie or whatever. You're not going to get the same kind of performance that you would have wanted. So best to do it yourselves. All right, so that's it, guys. I'm going to jump out of here, and then I will kind of follow up in the Google Meet and see if there's any questions. All right, take care, everybody.